Okay, we're back again. I figured I better make a number 2 video just to show how to put these back together, and there's a few other comments that I wanted to add about this whole process. When I got these parts out of the ultrasonic, they came out pretty good. The carburetor body came out almost like it looks like brand new. But I did notice that there is some pitting on this dip tube where the bowl was, and the bowl is pitted pretty badly. And yes, the gasoline will actually eat away the steel. It's hard to believe, but it does do that. These bowls have a electroplated coating of a rust resistant material on them, and when that's gone, they have no way to keep from rusting again. So in the event that this carburetor goes back together and runs good, at the very least, this should probably be replaced with a new one. There's no way to really tell. You don't want to buy a bunch of parts for a carburetor that's not going to function right again. These things are like a little tiny pumping heart. There's little valves and passages and all kinds of things in here. And if that pitting made it anywhere inside of any of these passages, this carburetor will never be right again. It'll never run right. So the only way to know if this whole venture will work is to try it. And if your carburetor runs good, if it worked good, then you can replace the bowl, and that'll take care of where most of the damage was. But this bowl will work good enough to put her back on the engine and go for a test. So I just wanted to put that comment out there. And you know, the main thing with these is don't use fuel that has ethanol in them ever in any small engine. I mean, if you got to go some distance to get rec fuel with 0 methanol, you're better off taking a few cans and going and filling them up and using those for your small engines. Unless you get in a really desperate situation where there's no power and you need your generator and the only gas station's open doesn't carry rec fuel, then, you know, get premium or whatever the best gasoline they have that has the least amount of alcohol in it. Do not buy the cheap stuff. It's tempting to fill a 5-gallon can with, you know, 87 octane cheap gas and use it for your generator, but I'm telling you, you're going to pay a horrible price, you know, down the road. And if you do that, just make sure that as soon as the crisis is averted, the power comes back on, and you're getting ready to put your generators away again, make sure you get some rec fuel and run it through them, at least an hour's worth, and then drain that out and go through your normal storage procedure that you would normally do of draining the bowl of your carburetor, draining your tank and all that. And you shouldn't have any problems. But it's best avoiding that fuel altogether if you can. Here in Southwest Florida, where I live, they sell it everywhere because people use it for fishing boats and speedboats and stuff like that, for anywhere where there's an outboard motor, because the same thing happens on those engines. If they leave alcohol in them, it just eats everything away. All right, that's out of the way. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and throw this thing back together, and I'll show that process. You can see the choke works good and smooth now. It's really clean. Throttle, make sure that works good and it feels smooth and there's no slop in it. And you have this one O-ring that was for the bowl. You want to make sure that's good and clean. If it's ripped or anything and you need a new one, just order that when you order your bowl. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get the jets and stuff out and see how they came out. It looks to me like everything cleaned up pretty well. I mean, I had them soaking in the mineral spirits for a couple hours to get rid of anything else that might have been on them from the leftover from the cleaning. And then there's another important point I want to go over. On here, there's a tiny little O-ring on the end of this pilot jet, the plastic jet that we talked about in the last video. There's a tiny O-ring on the end of that. You want to make sure that that's in good shape and your ultrasonic cleaner didn't damage it. Just make sure it's on there, it's seated and everything. And then you want to take a little compressed air and blow it through here. Like that. Just to make sure everything is, you know, as it should be. Blow through both sides. And then that does it for that. And then I usually use this like PB Max lubricant and just put like a squirt or so on the end of that thing, and it'll help it slide back in. And then you want to go back to the top of your carburetor and also compressed air down in there. That'll help blow any of the solvent that's down in there back out again. Now, this thing has a flat edge on it, 2 flat edges on this one, but some of them only have 1 flat edge. You want to make sure that that thing seats down in there properly. So it goes back down in, and you'll feel it. There's like it'll go in and then it'll stop. Then you can line it up. You'll see the little tang that sticks up where the flat edge is supposed to mount up with. And you want to just firmly push this thing down, and it should feel like a cork going in a bottle, like a stopper. That's how you know it's in there right. And then once it's all the way seated, then you can go ahead and put your idle screw back in. Now this particular carburetor doesn't use a mechanical idle. So basically what you want to do with this type of carburetor, screw the idle screw in until it just touches the butterfly. Just touches it. Just starts to move it. You don't want to go any deeper than that, because the governor takes care of all the throttle on this thing. So then you just want that to just act as a stop, and that's it. That's as far as that thing needs to go. And then that's back in. Okay. Next thing you want to put in is your emulsion tube. And the same thing. You want to run a little compressed air. This came out pretty good. I'm happy with that. Run a little compressed air through it, just to make sure you get all that degreaser out of there. Right, and then that's it. Now there's 2 sides to this thing. There's a bottom with 2 notches on it, and then there's a long part that has 1 notch in it. That's what's got to go in first. So you put that in first, 2 notches towards facing out like that, like this, just like this. Put it in, let it drop all the way down. Now you're going to put your main jet in. Same thing, hit it with a little compressed air, just to make sure all the cleaning fluid is out of there. And you want to drop this in so the screwdriver slot is facing out, just like this. Just like that, it'll go right back in. Then you want to take your special made screwdriver, and you want to get in there and you want to start turning this. Don't cross thread it. Make sure it's going in nice and easy. And then not too snug, just a little bit past tight. Snug it just a little bit. And then what I usually do is I put a spray of this in there, and that goes in there, and that'll help keep any corrosion out of there in case you don't use this right away. Okay, so that's all your jets back in. Everything's back in. Now you want to take this gasket and you want to put it right in that groove where it came from, because you're going to remember where all these parts came from because you've taken them out. And then once that's seated in there, you can go ahead and drop your float back in, and you'll see it. There's a little plunger that goes down into that plastic thing. Make sure that's in there. Take your pin. These usually slide in pretty easily. Slide that in like that. Pins in. Now you want to make sure that float is dropping down on there so it's level. See, this one's sagging just a little bit, so that needle probably should be replaced, but I don't have one, so we're just going to go with that. But usually it's got to be perfectly level like that, and that'll stop your fuel from flooding in your carburetor when the engine's not running. Okay, now you want to put your bowl back on like this. Now there's a drain port on here, and it sticks out the side. It sticks out on the angle. You want to make sure that's lined up with where your choke lever is. That way you can get to that when this thing is back on the engine. put this little red gasket back on the main screw and screw it back in there like that. Take your 10 mil and just snug it up. Snug it right up. And that's pretty much it. This carburetor is back together except for the governor, which I will put back on. These can be a little bit tricky to line up, but that's how that goes. And then this governor goes on just like this. You got to make sure that that little spring goes down back into the holder where it goes. These are a little fidgety to try to get back together, but you'll get it. Just take your time, and it'll make sense once, like I said, once you got these parts in your hand and you're doing this, this will make more sense. Because if that spring's not in there, the generator will pulse. It'll act like it has a dirty carb. Wait, it fell on me. So you want to make sure that that spring doesn't fall. But anyway, I don't want the video to be too long, so I'm not going to fidget with this the whole entire time. There it is. Okay, so it'll go on. It's just really fidgety to try to get that to line up. And you'll see once it's lined up, the spring's in there. And then put your 2 screws back in. Foodery, or whatever they call it, fidgery. Don't over tighten these screws either, because they're only they're only holding down plastic, and you'll crack it. And like I said, this little part is very expensive. You don't want to replace that if you don't have to. See, and then that'll turn. That just turns that's what gives you your idle. When the generator calls for more power, it turns up the throttle. It's just like the mechanical ones. It works the same way, except it's electronic. I really don't like them. Mechanical shit, you can always figure out what's wrong really easily. These are just modules. You just got to replace them. And that's it. That's the carburetor all cleaned up and ready to go. And then all you got to do is put it back on your engine. See how she runs. If she runs real good, then just replace that bowl, because you don't want that bowl's just going to corrode up again in no time once the fuel hits it. Just replace it. It's like $6. You can get like a clone one. You don't have to buy it from Honda. Honda, I think, wants like $12 for it. These genuine Honda parts, you can get them, but they're pricey. So you can try to find the clone ones and see if they'll work for you. You can get a whole new clone carburetor for this for about $30. So if all else fails and you put this back on and your generator still doesn't run right, you can always order a new one. The only thing you're going to have to do is change this part, because the clone carburetors come with a different servo on the top of them, and it won't work with the Honda wiring. It looks exactly the same, it's just wired different. So you still have to change this part out and use it on the new carburetor. So just whatever you do, don't destroy this thing in any of the processes. Just kind of leave it be and reuse it. Because if that thing's bad, you're going to have to replace it. You can only get those from Honda, the ones that will work with a Honda generator. And they're like $65. They're expensive. But they're pretty reliable. I mean, I've never seen a bad one yet on all these things that I've fixed. So I don't think they're really prone to failure that much. You know, unless they're, you know, physically broken. But there it is, the little Honda carburetor all fixed up and ready to go back on the generator. Thank you for watching, and good luck, and don't be afraid to try to fix it if it's broke.